Are you happy? That's the question many of us ask ourselves sometimes on a daily basis. Whether you're an entrepreneur or in a corporate job, we all want to be happy, especially at work. Gretchen Rubin is the host of the wildly popular podcast Happier with Gretchen Rubin, as well as several books on happiness and millions of followers online. Entrepreneur contributor Kelsey Humphreys sat down with Rubin to talk about the small steps we can do right now to head towards happiness.
People who are watching, I know that some people are going to be like, well, what about spontaneity? And this sounds so rigid. What do you say to them?
Well, that's very interesting. And that was another thing when I was coming up with the four tendencies. One of the things, because it took me a really long time to understand the four different categories. And people would always talk about spontaneity, and finally I was like, well, spontaneity is not a high value to me. I don't value spontaneity. I don't even really like spontaneity. But so that's okay, because now that I know that about myself, I don't worry about making time to be spontaneous. But for some people, especially for rebels, if you really value spontaneity, it's a very big sign that you might be a rebel. So maybe you want a freelance career where you're always deciding how much you want to work and what kind of gigs you want to take. That would be very upsetting to me. I don't like that. That would be too much ambiguity and uncertainty, but some people thrive on that. So again, it's like, how do you feel about spontaneity? It's not necessarily something that everybody likes. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. If you really do like it, think about, well, or somebody was saying how she used to have a job where she went into an office every day and she hated it, but then she went to work for a restaurant chain where it was like every day she would go to like a different restaurant and kind of check in, and so there was a lot of travel, and like, well, today I feel like doing this, today I feel like doing that, I don't feel like being on the road today, today I feel like listening to a podcast for a couple of, she could do her job, but in a way that accommodated the way she liked to work. So I think a lot of it's back to this idea of self-knowledge that you said right at the beginning. Think about, well, where do you thrive? What kind of, and maybe you can't shape everything to suit everything about you. Like maybe you're a night person and you would really prefer to start your day at 10:30.
Yeah, you can't.
Some offices can accommodate that, some can't, but you can at least think about it. Or maybe you could say to your boss, is there any way we have this really important staff meeting every week. Is there any way we could move it from 8:30 to 10:30? That would really help me out. Maybe they could do that. They can't start the workday at 10:30, or maybe the staff meeting could move later, or whatever it is. Once you know yourself, you can start thinking about like, well, how could I set things up to create the environment that works for me.
Fascinating. So one thing I think that people who are maybe writers or trying to get more creative, one thing with you is like a blog post a day, a podcast a week, multiple books. Like I'm overwhelmed just thinking about it. And I'm also like it's a lot of content. I understand the struggle. So I think there's two facets that I'd like you to talk about, and that is coming up with ideas or creativity, and then research. I mean, you do so much research. What's your process for those two things?
Well, and they're absolutely intertwined. I mean, I can't talk about one without the other, because really the way that I get ideas is just by taking in information. And so I will often be like, I read a lot of stuff that's weird. Like I go to the library all the time. I order all these obscure books off Amazon. And so I will often become like interested in a subject and do a lot of research on it kind of for no reason, or sometimes I don't understand the reason until much later. So for right now, I'm obsessed with the sense of smell. I'm obsessed with color. I have all these books about color all over. There was a period where I was really interested in pain. Then I'll get really interested in like a person. Like I was like super, super fascinated with Thomas Merton, who nobody really remembers anymore, but he was a really big deal at the time. And I used to try to be much more kind of strategic about it, and now I realize I should just let myself do whatever I want, and that it's by just taking in all this information that's when I get my ideas. Like I start noticing patterns, or even just talking to people. Like with the four tendencies, one thing that really struck me is there was this group of people that whenever I said, how do you feel about New Year's resolutions? They would say, well, I would never keep a New Year's resolution because January 1st is an arbitrary date. And I thought, the arbitrariness of January 1st does not bother me, but all these people are picking up on this. So there's like a pattern there that I wanted to explain. And reading just lets you like go through all these sort of patterns much more easily.
To read and hear more about Gretchen's story, go to Kelsey's website, thepursuit.tv or entrepreneur.com.